Hey there guys, Mr. Bostic here. It's about time for us to delve into the imperfect tense. Keep in mind this is pretty much your default past tense. As long as you're not dealing with a single completed action, which would definitely need the other past tense, then a lot of your general, broader, generic circumstances will need the imperfect. Let's dive in and take a look. Right. So if you're dealing with something that's repeated, something habitual, it needs the imperfect. Anything that was happening or things that were happening for a while, that needs the imperfect. Anytime when you see the words used to, it's a dead ringer right there. Just use the imperfect. In fact, with used to, or as you see in the next step, something that would often happen or would usually happen in the past, you don't need the words used to or would. You just need the imperfect tense. Right? For descriptions of people or places in the past, keep in mind that's stuff that is true not just for a moment, not just in a single instance, but it's in general, right? Saying what time it was or what the weather was like. Those are background descriptions. Things that set the stage, right, for other actions to come in and interrupt them. All those kind of situations require the imperfect. Right now, it's easy to remember. You just have two ending lists. You've seen them before. AR verbs need aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. And ER and IR verbs use ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ia. Now notice, if you didn't notice already, the first and the third singulars are the same. Now, that might seem like it's something that's going to be confusing, but the fact is it usually isn't. Context usually tells you which you actually are dealing with. And if you need to, you can use yo for an I, or él or ella for he or she. So it's not really that confusing, and you can clarify it if you need to. All right. Also, notice that all these things, well, these endings, get the pronunciation stress on the first letter. For example, aba, abas, aba, abamos, abais, aban. Right? So, abamos, because that's not the next to the last syllable, that A, it needs an accent mark. And by convention, all of the ER and IR endings need accents on the I. Now, that has something to do with the fact that I is sort of a weak vowel, and if you don't stress that I with an accent, it will tend to sort of blur into the A and pronounce it a little differently. So you need to write that accent on the I every time. And the fact is, later on down the line, there's another tense that will turn around and use the same endings. You'll see that later. Don't worry about it right now. But whenever you see this ending list, you have accents on every single I. So in some ways, that's easy to remember because you just always have to use it. And if it's not that ending list, all you need is one accent on the we ending, because it's a has two syllables that follow, ba and mos. All right. Now, what about the irregulars? Well, once again, this is pretty easy. We only have three: ser, ir, and ver, that are verbs that are irregular in the imperfect tense. There just aren't any more, right? So with ser, we have era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. For ir, we have iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban. For ver, we have veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. And notice that same kind of stress that we have noticed earlier with our endings, right? Now, the first thing we should look at, just like we said with the endings, is that in these first two, you only have accents on the we, éramos, íbamos, for the same reason we looked at with the AR endings. Also, every form of ver uses an accent on its I, for the same reason that we noticed with the IR endings. Take another look at this as well. Look at ir. It looks like it's pretending to be an AR verb. In fact, if you take the AR endings and you just replace the first A with an I, you have iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban. Easy to see how an ir, an IR verb, is irregular if it's looking like an AR. Sorry for this notice popping up, guys. All right. And what about ver? Why is that irregular at all? Veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. Let's see if you can think of it. Well, it's because it kept its E. I think we've seen this before, right? when you in the present tense even, right? You have that E staying there because otherwise you'd end up just having a V, and VIA is by way of. We use that in English. Coming to you live via satellite, right? In Latin, it meant way, as in the road. So it needs to keep the E for intelligibility, and that makes it irregular. All right, then. That's just it. That's all you need to do. Right? Two endings, endings listed. Sorry, two lists of endings, right? And three irregular verbs to memorize. That's it. So let's go ahead and practice some. In 1 second here, you can go ahead and pause the video and try to see, knowing the ending list the way you should know them. Hopefully you've written them down. And if you haven't, you should go back and write them down. Right? Take a moment to pause the video and see how these would conjugate. Okay. All right, let's take a look how this works out. For estar, we have estaba. Remember our aba, abas, aba endings? Estabas, estaba, estábamos. Remember the accent? Estabais, estaban. Right? Straight up regular. For comer, what would that be? Right, that's comía, comías, comía, comíamos, comíais, comían. Accents on every I. Likewise, salir, that's an IR verb. So we have salía, salías, salía, salíamos, salíais, salían. Now, this next verb is one of the funniest, and you could say tongue twister-ish kind of verbs that you're going to have, probably in the whole language. Trabajar becomes trabajaba, trabajabas, trabajaba, and the best one of all, trabajábamos, trabajabais, trabajaban. Now look at sentirse. It's a reflexive verb, but that works the same way as it did in present tense. The se just comes off the end, moves in front, and has to be the same person and number as the verb. So we get me sentía, te sentías, pardon me. Se sentía, nos sentíamos, os sentíais, se sentían. All right, so now it's time for you to try. First, as we said, you need to memorize your two ending lists and your three irregular verbs. Really, you need to know those backwards and forwards at the snap of a finger. Right? You have to get that down. Then, for your out loud practice, pick verbs at random out of our list and conjugate them in the imperfect tense. Do it out loud. Right? Look at the ending list, take the infinitive in your head, and just practice knocking off the AR, ER, IR, and throwing on the endings and pronouncing them. Right? Because remember, good pronunciation means good spelling. All right, guys, this is one of the simplest, not the simplest, but one of the simplest tenses in the Spanish language. Should be easy to get this down and under your belt and have one of the two past tenses be something that takes no trouble from you. All right. Well, guys, I hope you're doing well at home during these strange days of quarantine. I hope that this new material is easy for you to grasp and study, that you study well, and we'll be talking to you soon. At the end of the video, of course, expect you're going to need to be answering some questions. All right, guys, good luck to you, and we'll see you soon. Take care.